So I love creative people who aren't afraid to wear their hearts on their sleeves and who are always trying to write the next chapter in their creative journey and who put a lot of meaning and intention into everything they do. And that's exactly what today's guest is doing for herself. Today we have my friend Julie Hotz on the show. Julie is a cinematographer by trade, but really she's an artist down to her core. She writes, she paints, she has her own podcast. She really is one of the most creative and artistic people I know, and she has such a great outlook on life as a creative. I'm really excited to bring this interview to you guys today. Be sure to check us out on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Please give us a 5-star rating. That really helps us out there. And we're also streaming this on YouTube. So look up No Set Path on YouTube. Give us a subscribe or a thumbs up. It really helps the channel out. So without any further ado, here's my interview with Julie Hotz. It's lovely to see your face. Hold on. Let me pull up I have like just some talking points. Nothing crazy.
Yeah. I'm excited and curious because we haven't talked in a while. So.
We haven't talked in a while, but I really wanted to make sure we could record sooner than later, mostly because of the little Instagram exchange we had when I was having a really rough day or something. And I have to, and it's kind of spurred this whole thought process for me, but you were like, you're definitely an artist. I can tell by the photos that you post. And this is a really important conversation to have. I want to have this conversation with Julie about the importance of art and creation and experience in your life, and then hopefully that translates for other people, because I think it's super important. I met you on the job. We were camera opping the same job. I always knew you as, just someone like me. You show up, you point a camera at things, you get a paycheck, you do your best to be creative with it, and you go home. And there's nothing wrong with that, because I feel like I still do that.
We've got to pay the bills.
We got to pay the bills. There are worse ways to make a living, that's for sure. But, the more I got to know you and the more time went on, it's I discovered that you really have this artistic expressive side, and not just in the creation of art, but how you perceive things and the way you tie your experience into nature. And then you had, and I hope you bring it back if you're not doing stuff with your own podcast, Unrooted, because that was lovely, which is just another form of expression. And I was just oh my God, Julie, who I know is a through and through artist, just said I'm an artist. I feel validated. Anyway, that's my whole rambly spiel for the beginning. But
I love that.
Yeah,
because you are an artist, and I was very excited to see when you put your first episode out, because I was like, oh, you're putting things that have meaning to you out into the world.
It's true. Well, I'm trying to. Creative people always need a platform. It's fine. It's all good. Anyway, so...
Well, and it's funny how you were saying that you were, when I commented that you are an artist, how you felt validated. Because I had a moment where I was listening to the episodes on your podcast and looking at people's bios and had this moment of imposter syndrome of these are all successful people.
Oh,
and
no,
I'm
no.
how do we define success? And actually, for me, success is not just, hey, am I did I have a great 1099 great Schedule C this last year?
Totally.
But it's, I feel successful in the life I've experienced and the things I've learned about myself, even if on paper, my career has had some real highs and lows over the past, decades.
Yeah, well, I mean, everybody's mind, pick a person, guaranteed they've had a rocky road at some point. It's a guarantee. Nobody has a smooth ride ever. You clearly do a lot of other things.
was cinematography always the goal and then you found other forms of expression? Or was it just something that kind of like rose to the top as like, hey, maybe I can make a little bit of a living doing this one particular thing out of all the things that I am interested in? Like, I guess my question is, were you ever like focused on a specific career path, or was this just something that like rose to the top?
It was initially the chosen career path because I studied photography in undergrad and then I went to film school. And so while I was in film school, I was like, well, I love photography. So the like direct line is cinematography. And then as I learned more, I realized like, oh, actually the photographer and the director have more in common. But people, even in film school, they knew I was really good with cameras. And then when I moved out to LA, like the Alexa had just dropped and I had all this like still photography coloring experience. So I just like fell into that world and I needed a paycheck and I knew how to do it. But I also knew already at that point, I don't think I could say it out loud, but I knew that I didn't want to be like a career union DP. Because I didn't think it would allow for the quality of life I wanted and allow me to do some of the other things that I love and wanted to do. Because in undergrad, I had to take all different art classes. And there were so many different forms of expression I loved. And then when I went out to LA and I started, doing camera work, all these people were so specialized. And I started to be afraid to tell people that I did other things, that they would think I was like too watered down and flaky and not serious about one thing. And the truth is just that I'm like what you might call like a multi-potentialite. I'm multi-fascinated, multi-talented, and I love combining things. I love different stories I think should be told in different mediums. But it was a very long time before I circled back and began to use all those mediums. Because I remember there was one documentary that I was a cinematographer for. It was a short, like 20-minute documentary. And they ended up in a bind where they needed a new editor at the last minute. And they had a deadline because they were working with a brand that was helping fund it. And I was like, well, I know the footage better than anyone. I can edit it for you. And then I told them that they could not use my name as an editor on the credits because I was like, I don't want people to think that, because I was so in the like Hollywood, LA world where people do like one job and they do it really well. And the older I've gotten, the more I realize, wait, that's ridiculous. And I look up to people who combine different artistic mediums so much. I want to be able to do the same thing. And if people don't want to hire me for that, those aren't the people I'm meant to be working with. But
man, I love everything you just said so much. Mostly because I feel like this conversation is going to skip around a lot. I could already feel it, which is fine. But like, I feel like that attitude, really this is just a therapy session for me that I'm going to put out to the public. That's clearly what this is. I'm kidding. But
maybe it's a therapy session for me too. And if perfect. I cry, nobody be surprised.
Great. Okay. So, immediately what comes to mind is like, that speaks to just the relentless imposter syndrome that I've felt, that so many other people have felt, in like a very interesting way.
Yes.
So to the point of like the film world and especially like the union, like studio world being highly specialized, it's like, yes, totally. There's people who are unbelievable at like one, maybe two very, very specific things. And they build their whole life around it. And there's certainly nothing wrong with it. But it's like, if that doesn't vibe with you, you're forced into a weird corner where it's like you feel like you need to be one way up here, but down here you feel like uncomfortable with the fit. And it's maybe imposter syndrome isn't necessary. It's like adjacent, but it's not exactly the right thing. It's more about like listening to your gut right? And being honest with yourself. Because I've felt like a lot of very similar things. Like I've pushed myself very hard to like acquire, a skill, like a monetizable skill, for lack of a better term, as a cinematographer. But also, as we speak now in like the spring of 2023, like production everywhere is super duper slow. And friends of mine who are way more successful than I am, if we're putting success into the bracket of like frequency of work and amount of money earned, they're up here and I'm certainly not. And even they're having trouble getting jobs, or things just aren't happening. So, this isn't to talk about like how slow our industry is or whatever, but it is to speak about, from a place of creativity, you don't always have to have all your eggs in one basket. And it's, oftentimes better not to have all your eggs in one basket. And you do a ton of stuff. So you're a cinematographer professionally. You're an amazing photographer. I was browsing through your website yesterday just so I could, make sure I had my ducks in a row. And then I realized that you also paint, apparently, which I didn't know before. You had your own, or still have, it's still unclear, your own podcast.
It lives in the universe.
It lives in the universe. And you have like this other like complete like outdoor adventurer side. So you're wrapped up in so many things. And from my perspective, it seems like each one of these things fulfills a certain part of you in its own specific way. So do you want to like speak to that a little bit? Like in terms of just like, I don't want to say multidisciplinary because there's stuff in there that is more for the heart, like I would assume the outdoor, like the hiking and the backpacking and outdoor exploring.
Yes.
Is a different thing. But just like, I think maybe the way to say it is like, can you speak to like being so invested in like multiple things that feel like looking at, what you present to the world, it seems like all of those things are of equal importance to you.
Yeah. Yeah, they really are. And I think, in the times where I felt like, oh, I can only be doing like this like Hollywood lane that's like putting the most food on my table, it's also like my being a people pleaser or a recovering people pleaser, and always putting my intuition and my gut in second place, or waiting for new opportunities as I was, somebody who's raised to wait my turn, don't speak until I'm spoken to, and realizing I need to decide what I want, and I can do those things, and I can say that I am those things. But yeah, before I moved out to Los Angeles, I attempted to hike the Pacific Crest Trail, and I have at this point hiked the whole trail, but that year I did 3/5 of it because it was my first backpacking trip. I'd never backpacked before. And it sounds cheesy, but it changed my life. It completely shifted my paradigm. And then I moved to LA right after that. And, right when I moved to LA, I moved with $100. Because I'd used all my hiking budget up. I ate way more food than I knew I would need to eat. And so, yeah, I had friends whose couches I could crash on. So that's what allowed me to move to LA with $100. And I immediately just took any job I could find, PAing for a couple of days or handing out flyers at a natural food expo, like anything.
Oh, great. Yeah, totally. Do it.
But like I mentioned, I, moved there like literally the month the Alexa came out, and it's second nature for me to learn things quickly. And so I was learning this piece of technology at the same time as other people. And so I just pretty quickly, fell into just working on camera teams, working as a DIT, and because they were in great need at the time. And I burned out so quickly. Because I started working these, 12-hour days and not learning to say no and not getting enough sleep, especially because it was the days of overnight transcodes where you'd like wake up and check on them.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember, I guess it was about a little over a year and a half after I'd moved to LA, I was on this absolute ringer of a tier 0 film. And the hours, I was working like 15-hour days. It was in deep, deep inland Malibu, which meant it was like a hour-long drive each way. And I was so unhappy, and I was wondering why I had gotten into the film industry. And we were also shooting, it was the weeks that went into splits where half the shoot was during the day, half of it was night, and each day we were going later and later. So at the end of the week, I was driving home at almost sunrise. Oof. And I was really tired. And so I stopped and I started taking pictures, at sunrise. And I did this little jumping series with my iPhone, and where I had it on a self timer, and I would do it in a burst mode. And I would take all these photos that looked like I was levitating. And, I just posted them to Instagram. They were just for me. And it was just like, if I don't have this little creative outlet outside of this film work that is driving me into the ground, what am I doing anything for? And it reminded me, the next year, I was like, I need to learn to say no. I need to learn to have, I will always and forever be working on learning boundaries, especially as a freelancer when you got to make hay while the sun shines.
Yeah, well, the boundaries are always subject to change depending on how desperate you are at the time.
And what you need.
Yeah, totally.
And so in 2013, I was like, what I need is to actually take some time off or say no, or if I've worked enough, allow myself that, weekend to go for a hike. And, I reminded of all the things that I learned while hiking on the PCT. And so I took that summer off to finish hiking the PCT. And I realized while hiking that, I was like, this isn't meant to be a one-time thing in my life. This is something that I want to continue to do for the rest of my life. And it's just as important as creativity because it feeds my creativity. It brings me back to photography. It brings me, it makes me excited about film again. And it helps it keep off burnout. And, but then thinking about things like painting, and I also do illustration, I didn't get back to that until the pandemic, when there was so much downtime. And, I had bought some watercolors a little while back, and I had missed all the art that I had done back in college. And so I just started painting, every night, for hours. I would just listen to audiobooks and podcasts and just paint. And that is, I think, the turning point of when I was like, screw it. I'm going to do all these different things I want. We've also learned through the pandemic that we don't want to have all of our eggs in one basket.
Oh, yeah.
And so let me both in my own time participate in these different things and offer a wider range of things that I care about. And, I have different services besides just being behind a camera. And, as somebody who is, moving towards directing, it's like, it's good to have this big picture view of everything where you can use all your different disciplines to be able to work with different departments, to talk to different people, to bring new ideas to the table.
Yeah, so. I love that you're looking at moving into directing. I think that'll be a really good fit for you. We need to go back a couple steps though, because you said something and then just kind of left it there and didn't elaborate, which was hiking the Pacific Crest Trail changed your life. You were just like, it changed my life, and moving on. And there's no detail there. What about it? What about that experience was so pivotal and life-changing for you?
There's so many different facets. And one is your job is not your life. And it's like one part of my life, it's like a slice of the pie. And so when I think of priorities and how to live my life moving forward, it's like I had to keep going back to that when I would feel like close to burnout. Why is that? Because all of a sudden your job is becoming your life and you've not left room for all these other things that are important, including community. I stopped saying, yes to friends like birthday parties or things. I was like, I don't know, I may be working. It also put me more in connection with myself. I am somebody who lives in my head. I am not like on this world
This
very
is
much.
why you and I get along, is because I also live inside my own head a lot.
Yes. And hiking all day long put me in my body for the first time. And the fact that I was feeling, my body in new ways, and sometimes very sore, and sometimes it didn't feel good. But also, I was more present than I'd ever been. I have a pretty good memory, but I can remember the days on the trail crystal clear, so many details. And it's because I was present and I wasn't distracted. It showed me what a life without modern distraction is like.
Yeah.
And I mean, and hey, I'm a hypocrite. I am addicted to scrolling TikTok at
No,
night.
sure.
And, but I also realized it is very important for me to set time aside where I go to places with no reception so that I can experience life undistracted.
Yeah, you allow balance in where where a lot of people have trouble allowing that balance in. Myself included, which is why I have conversations like this.
Yeah. I will also say, while I do live in my head a lot, up to that point, I wasn't working through a lot of things. And so it gave me this time and this space to ask questions and to keep asking them, to live the questions, and to really began I think there's things that you understand about yourself personality-wise growing up. But I feel like that was the first key to open the door to begin understanding who I am, so that in my late 20s and in my 30s, I could really come into myself, who I was. And yeah.
Very cool. We can keep going back to the Pacific Crest Trail because it seems like it started the whole outdoor part of your life, but it's
It did.
Okay, so how did you even learn about that being a thing? I'm so curious, mostly because I've spent a little bit of time outdoors. A few years ago, I went and did some backwoods camping in the mountains of Colorado. Was sleeping on a pad under a tarp out in the middle of nowhere. And it's a longer story, but there's a lot of really interesting things that happen when you are in a world free of distraction. So I understand the draw for me, but it's how did you discover this particular hike? What was the draw for you? I know you've touched on things a little bit, you needed to shift something in your life, and so on. But I think more specific to discovering that particular journey as a thing you could do.
Yeah. So after film school, I had no money because I spent it on school.
Yep.
And so I moved back home with my parents in the Dallas area. And I was getting odd film jobs every now and then and waiting tables. And, for whatever reason, I guess in my mind, I didn't think that I could just move right out to LA, that I needed to save up money and do it that way. And so I had a lot of friends from film school who did move straight out to LA, or even ones the year after me. And one of my friends, we were on the phone as he was driving out to LA, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I just past through like the Palm Springs, Palm Desert area, past the Pacific Crest Trail. And I was like, what's that? And he's like, oh, it's this trail that goes from Mexico to Canada. And like in the desert, you have to like, hide water for yourself. And he just made it sound so wild and just like an experience that was so outside of everything I knew that I was like, oh, I want to do that one day.
Yeah.
And I had some friends that I went to undergrad with, and they were all photographers. And I went and visited them because they lived in Dallas, and they had hiked, because it was a couple people, all of them had hiked the Appalachian Trail.
Got it.
And so they were going through their photos and showing me, and just like off the cuff, I was like, well, I think I might like to hike the Pacific Crest Trail one day. And then a couple months later, one of them emailed me and was like, hey, you know how you said you want to do that? Well, I've decided I'm going to hike it. Do you want to come? And I thought about it for a month, and I was like, if I don't do this now, I'm never going to do it. And so I said, yeah. And, as somebody who loves to go down research rabbit holes,
Yep.
I was like, I can research my way into doing this. And it was definitely a learning curve. And I was, so outside my comfort zone. But, another thing that I guess I wouldn't learn until years afterwards, and this includes the other long distance hikes that I've done as well, is in one of my, I can't remember exactly when it was, but in one of my existential crisis moments, when I just really felt like I don't fit in this world, or like, I asked myself, well, when has there been a time that things have made the most sense and that you didn't feel like you were just pushing against society or the grain? And I was like, oh, it was while I was long distance hiking. And it's like, okay, well, why was that? And I was like, oh, because there was equal parts of chaos and organization. Because every day I was wearing the same damn outfit, putting on my little grubby clothes, carrying the same things. I had these like chores I had to take care of. I had a specific amount of food in my backpack. But every day I was also seeing new sights and having to address new problems, and I'm somebody who has ADHD. And so I like the newness and the problems to solve and the adventure. And then I think I also might be on the spectrum. So organization and, some consistency really helped me. And so just understanding about this being a place that the world made sense. And looking at nature, it's the exact same way of this order and chaos. I think, how can I bring this into my own life? And part of that is by combining these different disciplines.
That's so cool. That is a perfect example of when it's a good thing to say yes, right? You can say yes to like too much work or too much of lots of things you can say yes to. But saying yes to unique experiences that you don't know if you're going to have a chance to experience again, I think is totally worth it every time. I don't know. I think it's like getting comfortable with the idea of being uncomfortable, like really
Absolutely.
trying to step outside of your comfort zone and like challenge yourself a little bit. There's so much value in that and what it does for the creative mind, or the mind of a creative person, because I feel like we're all like similarly disposed, where like some people might be a little more disorganized and chaotic, and some people might be a little more organized and ordered. But I think there's common tales with everybody. It's like, I think somewhere in there, most people who are creative, especially creative for a living, whether they show it or not, have a lot more emotion and a lot more thought and questioning and all that stuff going on inside. So it's like finding these things that help kind of like sift through all that stuff, I think is really important. And that's like a really cool, like being out in nature is so important. When I was in like living in New York, it was much harder to do. Now it's a little
very
bit
hard to get out of the city.
Yeah, it's very hard to get out of the city. Well, so on that, it's actually it's a good segue into like the concept of fear. Like so many things in life, especially nowadays, like are so like fear based. Like especially now, like in post-COVID world, and like, you know, at this particular moment in time, like the economy is kind of crappy, and like, are we going to have a recession? Are we not going to have a recession? Like so everybody's guard is up for so many things. Mm-hmm. You know, now in particular, but that's kind of always the case. It's like I can go back to earlier in the conversation when you were talking about kind of being afraid to express the fact that you aren't just tunnel vision on like being a cinematographer, like, you know, being a union DP and like, this is what I do, this is what I build my life around. It's like camera is life, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, it sounds like it took you a minute to get over that fear and get comfortable with like another part of yourself. So I guess the question is, do you think there's a way, because you've experienced plenty of things in life, do you think there's a way to use that kind of like internal fear to your advantage? Maybe that's a good way to put it.
I've never thought of it in that terms, but I definitely feel like learning to navigate fear in person, like, you know, the fears that you deal with out in the woods are very external usually. If I can learn to navigate those in person, can I not navigate fears, you know, in my mind? And yeah, when I think about specifically the, you know, deciding not that I didn't want to be a union DP, career DP, I think part of it too was accepting and like my ego being like, it's okay to say no to something that on paper looks flashy, so many people aspire to. It's okay for me to be like, I want to be a great union camera operator, you know, and I love DPing documentaries, and I don't have to be the best in one position at the top of that field to have a fulfilled, wonderful life. And but our society says you should be the best of the best in whatever you do. And you know, when I was hiking, I also realized that so many of my fears became external, you know, shelter, food, warmth, you know, not getting in poison oak, those kinds of fears. And I had so few existential fears. And then as soon as I got back to the city, all those external fears went away, and they were immediately replaced by these existential ones, you know, about like career and relationships. And I'm like, well, if I can navigate these external fears, I can navigate the internal ones too. And in 2018, I moved to New York for a year because my partner at the time got a job there. And I thought, I'm freelance. This is no problem. There's plenty of film work in New York. I can do this. But also, I think I was maybe excited to change locations because I had been really going through some imposter syndrome, some self-sabotage, because I had stopped DITing and I had started camera operating, but I was still a little bit timid about reaching out to people. Or I would tell myself, oh, you don't have as much experience as this other person. So I had kind of been flailing a little bit. And when I moved out to New York, I was like, this is the perfect opportunity. I've just like put a new reel together. I am going to email everybody I know in LA. It's a great time to catch up and, share this new reel, tell them I'm camera operating. And also, do you know anyone in New York? And everyone was very supportive. And all of them were like, we don't know anyone in New York.
Right.
And I was already in New York and I was like, oh no, like this is not good for paying the bills.
Yeah.
And I had a very, very slow period and it was really scary. And I mean, I know I wasn't going to go without food because I was like living with my partner at the time and, but I had all this extra time on my hands. And I also, I think, had some seasonal depression.
That's a thing. That's its own thing.
I had never lived that far north.
Oh, yeah.
And it was, I was in a really dark place. And then I remember like telling myself, you know how to do hard things. You can walk through this. You can go over this mountain. It's just indoors in like a tiny apartment instead of out in the woods. Right. And that was the year that like I learned so much about myself because I had this extra time that I never had when I was on production all the time. And I was, in my mid 30s. And so I was like, oh, I am only going to be like releasing eggs and be able to get like pregnant for a certain period of time in my life. Do I want kids? And so like working through that. And that is the year I came out as queer. And there are just so many things I learned that I would never have learned if it hadn't been a slow time, if it hadn't been a hard year, if I hadn't been faced with like, because I also didn't have spending money to just like go out and have fun in New York. This was like either hanging out in Prospect Park across the street or in my apartment or at the laundromat.
Yeah.
And, when I did like my year look back that year, at first I was like, oh, I haven't done that much. And I didn't work on that many things this year. And just as I was starting to meet more people in New York, my partner at the time and I ended up moving to Austin. And I was like, wait, yeah, I actually did. I worked through a lot of fears, learned a lot of things about myself. And, I've continued to try to use that as a blueprint for things because I'm still always dealing with fear. And I think it's just, addressing it, working through it, and to keep asking it questions. Be like, okay, well, if I'm having this resistance, if I'm having this fear, why? Be that little kid version of myself that's like, but why?
Yeah.
But why? Yeah, but why? And you learn so much. So
that, I swear to God, Julie, you should be the poster child for like everybody who's in a creative field in terms of how to have like a healthy relationship with yourself. Because you've put in the work, and not a lot of people put in the work on themselves. And,
it takes time to find some of the things.
It takes time.
Too,
it takes time.
And the resources.
Yeah. And, aspirationally, sure, I would love to shoot, great narrative films or some big fancy TV series and like get to make beautiful images and like really like inspire other people, because that's really all I want to do is sure, I want to make a good living and like not be stressed out my whole life. It's like I want to be comfortable, but really it's more about like legacy, right? When I'm not around anymore, is anybody going to remember me? Or, it's like I want to leave a mark somehow. Anyway.
Well, and I think there's two different kinds of legacy.
Sure.
There's the kind that's like, there's going to be a statue of you and like people are going to know your name. And then there's the legacy of like touching people's lives. Yeah. And maybe your name won't be known afterwards, but you've made an impact on the world and the people you care about and like the world around you. That is a intangible kind of legacy. And that's the kind that I want to have, where I like touch people's lives along the way and, tend to the earth. Like when I was in Austin during the pandemic, I like planted the backyard with cover crops and changed the soil and helped restore it. And I was like, that's also legacy to me, as much as like the creative things or having these kinds of conversations that might like give somebody a piece to the puzzle they're trying to figure out.
Yeah. I mean, I want the statue. I'm just kidding.
I only want the statue if I'm like,
no, but like what I was going to say, and to your point, right? Like to what you just said about like, you know, leaving a different kind of legacy. You know, now I find myself unintentionally starting to have questions about like, well, this is, you know, do my aspirations and what I know is like healthy for me, or what I think is healthy for me or for my family or whatever, do they line up? How can I still, you know, aspirationally achieve things that will fulfill that side of me? But then also, how do I fill in the parts that would be left empty if I was just like head down, like all I'm going to do is this one career thing. And you know, I think that's why traditionally people who are career workers in the entertainment business, and I will include that as a big umbrella because there's lots of different facets, kind of like traditionally, you know, I'm generalizing, I realize, but it's like, don't do so great on the home front all the time. And so it's like this very weird dichotomy that like I'm certainly dealing with in my own way. And if I'm dealing with it, I guarantee you there's, you know, 100, 1,000, however many other people dealing with exactly the same thing in their own way. What you said about like, you know, changing the earth, like changing the soil in your backyard and doing something that's like
it's still lasting.
Yeah, more. I was going to say permanent, but more lasting, right? Like that. Like you've left that mark in the ground in Texas, which, you know, most people's mark, mine included, is like, oh, this 5-minute video that like is going to disappear into the internet tomorrow.
I have a lot of that. You know, but it is asking the question of like, oh, how can I build a sustainable life? And, you know, everybody is wired different. So for some people, the film lifestyle works great for them. And that's great. Yeah. And I think that there are also, you know, a good portion of people in the film industry who are workaholics.
Oh, yeah.
And I can't compete with that as somebody who loves to do different things, you know, and you know, when I was deciding if I wanted to have kids or not, I realized that I really love being a secondary caregiver. And I love being an auntie. I love showing up for people in my life. And that is at odds with the film industry. Oh, yeah. And so that is why I have, you know, tried to start diversifying. And also it's why I don't know where I'll be in 10 years. Also, you know, my body is getting older. So, you know, I'm working on brushing up wheel skills because I'm not going to be able to like wear an easy rig 12 hours a day in, you know, 15 years from now. Oh,
yeah. Ever since you know, oh, man, you were so preaching to the choir, because it's like after I crossed 40, because I'm 41 now, and I started like strapping on my camera rigs, and especially my Movi rig, like my big, like stable, like for people listening who don't know, like just a big stabilized camera rig. Like after I crossed 40, my hips do not like it, like at all. It's a real thing. Like physically, it's pretty taxing. And yeah, it's like thinking about all that stuff, which, you know, I don't feel my age, but, you know, my hips would say otherwise.
Yeah, mentally I am much younger than my age, but yeah, joint wise, I don't know. Yeah, and it is hard to ask that question of like, what is sustainable? Because what if it isn't the glitzy, glamoury thing? And I think about one of my friends I hike the PCT with a lot, Jen, she had like a big fancy job in LA for a long time, and it was very stressful. Like, she made good money, but it took up her whole life, and it was not in the film industry, but she quit it and started waiting tables. She's like, because she is a people person. She can talk to anyone. She's like the server that's like the best kind of server. And she's like, I just want a simple life.
And there's nothing
then
wrong
she
with
like
that.
moved. Yeah. And she has since like moved to Vermont. And, she and her partner are like building a house out there.
That's the place to be if you want a
And-
simple life. Vermont's lovely.
Yeah. And it's like, we're taught like, oh, you have to like be a CEO or like, again, the top of whatever your career is. But what if for you, sustainable is living a simple life where you get to show up for the people around you that you care about and love in your community?
Well, it's also
doing all these other things that you love.
and it's also, I think generationally speaking, for folks like you and I, there's no like guideposts for architecting this type of existence for ourselves, right? Because generationally speaking, our parents come from the world of, you go to school and you get a job and you keep upgrading your job until you find something that like pays you enough and gives you enough stability that you just stay there until you stay there as long as you possibly can. And then you've traded all your time away for a paycheck, which is like, I'm big on like trading time for money right now. It's like it's a very big topic for me. And then it's like you retire, and it's just like a totally different structure where it's like you go away to some place for a day and you like put in all this time doing something that you earn a paycheck for, and then you have your nights and your weekends. Granted, that still applies to plenty of people in the world today, but I think for folks like you and I, and becoming more common, is like this paradigm shift where it's like people are more intentional about trying to architect their own life that works for them, as opposed to, oh God, I don't even know how to say it. It's like I was so close to making a really good point, but architecting something that works more for them in terms of overall lifestyle than what you're able.
Than a standard issue stock life.
Yeah, exactly.
Not that that's a bad. I'm not trying to say like if you do the typical thing, that's not a moral good or bad. But
no, all this stuff.
Yeah, we've definitely been like,
all this stuff comes with a caveat, of course. And it's like I've talked to my brother about this, where it's like he is totally the opposite of me, where he requires the structure. And he owns it. He's like, if I did what you did, I would lose my mind, because he needs the stability, he needs the structure. Even though structure might be helpful, I can't go back to it. I've turned down 6-figure jobs because I'm like, you guys just have too many meetings. Like, there's no way. I'll like blow my brains out. There's no way.
Oh, I remember there was one. I was home one Christmas, and my dad is always trying to get me to move back to the Dallas area. And he was like, hey, you could get a job for the city, good benefits, and, going on and on and on. And I was just like, I just started like bawling. I'm like, you don't think that I wish I could be just happy with stability? I don't know why I am the way I am, but like, I need something different.
Yeah. Well, also, I mean... Yes, exactly. It's like
and my dad was like, I do like stability. And I'm like, which, again, I'm looking for the balance, because when I look at my current retirement plan is work till the day I die.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I do know that I have to figure out some things. But
I mean, you hit the nail on the head, which I'm sure will resonate with people listening as well, which is like, it's the topic of choice, right? it's like, sure, if you could choose an easier road, you'd probably take it, but it's like you're just not wired that way, you know? And and that's okay. Like, you know, like it's more important to stay true to yourself and true to like what it is that fulfills you than it is to try and fit within a box, which is way easier said than done. And I think it's always a work in progress. At least for me, it's always a work in progress.
Yeah. Because even thinking about the film industry, it's like, oh, I've tried to put myself in that box and it will not be long-term sustainable. Like, I was so heartened when there was almost the big IATSE strike a couple years ago.
Sure.
Because for the first time, I heard people talking about the unsustainable hours and people who are like, I just want to be able to put my kids to bed. I just want to be able to, you know, have, you know, just a little bit more time and more freedom outside of work.
Sure.
And, you know, I'd always been afraid to voice those things for fear that somebody would think I wasn't very invested or not serious or wasn't going to work hard on, you know, a 14-hour day. The problem is I'm too invested and I work too hard on those days so that there isn't room for the rest of life. Yeah. And so it's like, and I love film and I love storytelling. So how can we create a world where both are possible? To have room outside of work. And I mean, because I also think when you're not working so much that you can't get enough sleep, your brain works better. Your body works better. You're more creative. And it's like, how can we change the culture around this thing that we love to make it more sustainable for more people? But
yeah, I mean,
and I don't know the answer to that.
That's okay. You don't need to know all the answers. We all figure this out together. I do want to bring up Unrooted for a second, right? Only because when I first learned you were doing this podcast, I was like, oh, wait, Julie has a podcast? I need to listen to this. It was totally different. It was totally different than this, because this is just two people talking. It was storytelling from your perspective and you know, and a very intimate subject matter, you know, relating to to home. And what was the impetus for starting that show up?
Well, when I moved from LA to New York, I had no idea how homesick I would get for the West Coast. Both the combination of like, I love the landscape of the West Coast, but also I had a lot of friends out there. And, but I also didn't know, you know, some people so in their core know where their home is and where they want to live forever. And I feel like I've been somebody who's always meandering, trying to find out where that place is. And, you know, podcasts are usually a little cheaper than film, and they're easier to do by yourself.
It's true.
And so I was like, well, this is something I can explore with audio. I love this medium. Yeah. It's carried me through many different long-distance hikes, and I love sound design. It was something that I really enjoyed in film school. I also have some music in my background and composition, so it's like, oh, I can do all these different
you
parts,
wrote the music
and I can compose the music.
Yes.
Yeah, and so it was something that I was just able to craft by myself in my downtime. But because I was doing so many different aspects, every episode took me a very long time. And passion projects don't always pay the bills. So I would love to do more of it. But it is definitely just taken a back seat for a while.
Oh, yeah.
But it was so enjoyable to be talking to other people about home and really... yeah, just exploring what that concept means to different people. And yeah, because like I in the first episode, talked to some of my family members, like my dad, who has always been like, oh, rooted in Texas, like Texas is home. And I'm like, why can't I just be the same way? Why can't I just like, have a less complicated life in this aspect?
Yeah. Just talking about it is reminding me how much I like enjoyed that form of like personal storytelling. It felt like a really like pertinent form of storytelling for you, like an exploration, right? It's like an exploration. And I think that's a better way to put it. It's like finding a medium that works for this type of exploration, which is like a concept, right? And again, I'm going to tie this all back to like how I view you. I view you as a very like true to the word artist, right? Because you're looking at how all these different facets can hold some form of expression for what it is that you're experiencing. So I thought Unrooted as another form of expression was really lovely. I'm like excited to go back and listen to it again. I will put a link to it in the show notes so other people can find it as well. I think to kind of wind things down, the last thing I want to talk to you about was what moving into directing or trying to move into directing or whatever that as a concept means to you. Knowing the role of a director, it seems like a good marriage of like creative expression and like career in the entertainment industry, and like maybe that melds together a little bit better in that role than it does being more of like a technician. When did you get the itch to direct, or has it always been there and now you're just getting more comfortable with putting it out there?
With saying it out loud? I think it's the latter, because and I have done some small directing projects, and I think it is that still getting over the like saying it, calling it. Like it took me a while before I could just be like, I'm an artist, even though for so long it always has been, right? And the same with directing. And I think so long that it was like, oh, well, I need to have more on a directing reel. Oh, I need to have more of this. I need to have more of that. And the, some of the imposter, syndrome things that I've been working through over the past years allow me to say this. And I think one reason I knew that I want to go this route is that in still photography, which I also love, you are in charge of setting the tone. Yeah. And that's what I love. I love setting the tone. And, on the podcast, that was one of the things I loved doing, was crafting the tone, not just the story and not just the technical aspects of like making it sound good, but really setting a tone. And that's what the director does. And why I realized like, oh, even though I love lights, I love camera movement, and that's all really fun. What I am most excited about is setting the tone and telling the story. And I also love collaborating with really talented people. So I think about all the DPs I've worked with. I'm like, oh, I would love to work with them, even if that means I don't get to be behind the camera.
Not only are you setting the tone, you're also like just choosing the right direction out of all the good ideas that are presented to you. And it's totally a game of like best idea wins. And it's not about hierarchy as much as it is about curation. Is the right way for me to say that. And so I think as like the director of a project, it's not about, it's not about everything is your idea. Far from it. It's like you're just answering questions all day long about, different facets of the project and like making decisions based on options that are presented to you. All within like this tone you're trying to set. So it's like, I think it's a really cool way to look at the role of directors, not like being like this idol at the top of the call sheet, but more of just like kind of the curator of the on-set experience. And I think it's definitely a good fit for you because you're so good at curating your creativity in these different facets, and you're totally a people person. So it seems like a very good fit. I'm very excited for that.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Well, Well, and to tie it back to the outdoors, like I love navigating. And so the director is like the navigator, the person who reads the maps and, you know, but still takes the feedback of the people around them and the trail.
Yeah. We'll get you a compass and maybe a sextant. Who knows? Anyway, this has been super lovely. Before you go, I will place plenty of links in the show notes, but for people who might be driving or listening on headphones, if somebody wants to find you online, where can they find you?
Julie Hotz, HOTZ.com, juliehotz.com, juliehotz.com, and my Instagram handle is juliehotz. If you just type it into Google, it'll probably pop up because there's not very many people with the last name Hotz. So
Fair enough.
And it's also a great name for making nicknames.
I'm sure. That's a different conversation. Thank you so much for being here and doing this. Really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been really fun.
Talk to you soon.
All right, folks, there you go. That was my interview with Julie Hotz. She's so insightful. I really hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. Her website, again, is Julie Hotz. That's HOTZ.com. Or if you want to look her up on Instagram, her handle's @JulieA.Hotz. I also will put in the show notes a link to her podcast, Unrooted. It's been a while since she's updated it, but I really, really enjoyed the first season she rolled out. Hopefully she brings that back, but give it a listen. It's really great. If you want to find out more about this show, you can find us at nosetpath.com or on Instagram @nosetpathpodcast. And you can find out more about me, your host, Drew English, at drewenglish.com or on Instagram @drewenglish with 2 H's at the end. I also have some links to my Twitter and LinkedIn profiles on the website as well. Thank you so much for being here. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it, and we'll see you on the next one.